Right, what are we talking
Hang on,
about?
1 second. I'm at Pearl Anderson's house on the 13th of April 2025 for recording her for the Seen But Not Heard project. So Pearl, we're recording around thinking about the drag and gay scene of Hessle Road, so things to do with Vauxhall, things to do with La Cagelles, all of Ray, all of those people that you know. But what I'd really like to do is do a bit before that, which is about who you are. So can you tell us something about you, something about your connection to Hessle Road? Just talk to me who you are.
Right.
As if you've never told me before.
Nearly 78 this month. I've lived down Liverpool Street until I was 17. I've always lived on Hessle Road and I don't want to move off it. I always say they'll take me out of this flat in a wooden box. I love Hessle Road and I love the people on Hessle Road. I had a gay cousin, and when I was 14 I was told he had a split personality and that's why they'd put him away. And it wasn't they put him away because he was gay.
Where did they put him?
They put him into a bad boys home.
Which would where? Do you know, in Hull somewhere?
No, outside Hull. Outside Hull, yeah. I was only about 12 or 13 when I found out about it, because I was trying to work out how he had a split personality. I didn't know what one was. I couldn't work out what one was. And it wasn't. And it was when I was married and I happened to see him and he said, "Oh, I'm gay." And I said, "Oh, right." I had no idea what gay meant besides being happy. And he explained to me, sat in Dole, what it meant. And he said, "I've come to sign on because I'm going to jail." Because you went to jail for being gay then. That was in 1963, 64.
And had he done something, or what had happened, or something?
Yeah, he'd been caught in toilets with another man. I won't say his name, I'll just tell you he was a solicitor. And Christopher took all the blame. So nothing happened to the solicitor. Christopher went to jail. But saying that, the solicitor always had time for him. If he needed to talk to anybody about anything, he'd just go to the office and the girl would say, "Oh, he's busy." And he'd say, "He'll see me," and he'd knock on the door. "Coming in, Christopher, coming in." Always looked after him because he took the blame.
And so was this your...
He was my mother's sister's son. He was my cousin. Yeah.
And do you remember it being talked about in the family?
No. Not
Never.
Until I was 25. And our Christopher had come to see me and I went in. And I'd left my front door open. And so he went to my Aunt Hazel's that was just round the corner. I lived in Selby Street, she lived in St George's Road. And he rang me up from her house. "Do you know your front door's open?" I said, "Oh, Chrissy, go back and shut it for me." No, I didn't. And he said, "Oh." When I went back to Aunt Hazel's, she only sat and talked to me for 2 hours about if I believed in God, I would be cured of being gay. He said, "I wish I hadn't gone there." Yeah, so that was the only time. And he said, everybody believed that it was an illness. All my aunts, my mother, it's an illness.
And is that because they were strong Christians, or...?
There were strong Christians, but I don't think they realised anything else. Christopher, when I think about it, he was older than me, but all his life I was the boss. So he was a very gentle person. Could stick up for himself, could fight for himself, but where I was concerned, I was the boss. I am bossy. You know.
And so, what you were in at that point? So tell me about your mum and dad and what they were and what they did for a job. And
My mother at that time, she was a mother housewife.
yeah.
My father was a fisherman, and my father was very broad-minded. So when they found out Christopher was gay, my father, I think, was just thinking, God, that he's someone gay. Until years later, the youngest son was gay. And Brian's very proud to be gay. He doesn't hide it from anybody. And is a lovely, lovely man. He is married. He married a man. Him and Nigel got married when Hull started marrying same-sex people. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I guess what we're also thinking about is how people lived in this area at that time, and you've talked before about how you were all really close and
Very
you all
close.
lived all next door to one another,
Yeah.
or down the same street.
Down the same terrace. Its name was Kingston Avenue, but if you asked anybody, they'd say, oh, Langton's Terrace, because my uncle lived down there, my grandmother lived at number 3. My Aunt Emma, who had Christopher, lived at number 1. My Uncle Mick, who was my grandmother's second son, he had 5 sons and a daughter. He lived at number 8. My Aunt Chris, my grandmother's eldest daughter, lived at number 10. Her daughter lived at number 12. And my mother lived at number 15, but she'd been born at number 14 before my grandmother moved across to the posh side. The ones, as you went down Kingston Avenue, from number 7 to number 15, you walked in the living room. You walked in and you was in the living room. From number 1 to number 6, you walked in and it was a hallway with the front room. It had a living room and it had a scullery. So you had 3 rooms downstairs.
And that was
so
posh.
that was the posh side. Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yes. Yes.
And what did you think about the difference between the posh and the not posh? Do you remember thinking about it?
Yeah, I would have loved to. Whenever we come home from school or anything, we walked in and the wind blew through the house, and my mother would say, shut that bloody door! And then you'd slam the door as quick as you could. But if we lived in my granny's side of the house, it was brilliant, because you walked in and that you could shut the door, walk down the hallway, open the living room door. No wind.
All on one street.
Yeah.
And so this close-knit family.
Yes.
But even so, the social, going back to Christopher and your brother, I get that this close family that lived all together felt the pressures of a wider social issue, do you think?
No, Christopher would have said yes, because Christopher had aunties that used to think that they could make him better. His mother used to love him, but his father thought he could make him better. Beat him. Yeah. Where his mother absolutely adored him and she didn't care. It's funny that Christopher's gay and he was the youngest son. My brother's gay and he was the youngest son. So it makes you wonder, could it be the nature?
Who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
And so, so you lived amongst this huge family.
Yes.
And can you remember anything from your childhood? Tell me some stories from your childhood in this, other than the windy corridor.
Yeah. Well, we lived at the bottom of Liverpool Street, where there was a woodyard, and it had great big massive doors that used to slide to the sides so that lorries could get in to pick up the wood. And our house was next to the woodyard. And when I was little, my mother used to say to Ben Willie, he was Dutchman, can I put the baby in the field? Because he had a big field outside of his house. And she'd put me in the field and I'd be there all day. She could hear me yell. And I used to be as brown as a berry. And then he said he wanted to retire. And his sons would not take over. They didn't want to know. I don't know what they did for a living, but they didn't want to know. So one day the doors were just closed and they never opened again until we opened them.
As kids?
And as children, there was Vernon Thorley and Gilly Thorley. There was Leslie Milner, they lived in the next terrace. The Thorleys lived down our terrace. And his brother John. And there was a couple of other lads. And they said, oh, well, if we had a tool, we could take this wall down. So I said, I've got one. Running out, and I come out with a bloody big crowbar. So they took the wall down. And as they took the wall down, the door. So they dragged the door, and I didn't jump off it, but we used to climb up the side of the building onto the roof and jump off it. Sometimes we'd use the doors as a slide. It was paradise. We had so much to play with. We had nothing, but we made our own fun. And in the woodyard, woodyard, there was a fence, and we used to climb over that. And we was on the railway lines, and we used to play on the railway lines. And there was a great big pond in the middle of the railway lines, because there was the railway lines, then there was this great big massive field before you got to the dock. And I don't know if a bomb had dropped there, because there was this great big hole filled with water, and we used to go frogging and getting frogs and tadpoles and all sorts there. We had a marvellous place. Yeah. Wildflowers of every colour you could imagine. Yeah.
Can't believe it now.
No. Now if a Ben brings a flower in, it's a 2-year-old that's picked an head off. Years ago, I used to go playing on there, and I'd come back with a great big bunch of flowers. And my mother always had flowers in her house. Yeah. And there was always wildflowers that we took. Yeah. They only lasted a couple of days, but we could go out every day and take as many as we liked.
And was that common then for all the kids in the area to be playing out like this?
Yes. People used to come from top of the street to play at bottom of the street, because there was a lot. Why, at top of the street, they only had tram sheds to go on, to climb on the roof. Whereas at bottom of the street, it was paradise. Yeah.
And where were you at school?
Scarborough Street School, from starting school to being 11. My first crush was Mr. Cuthbertson when I was 10 years old, and he took us. He was the teacher we had a teacher for the full year. We didn't swap and change, so he did everything, and I loved history. Kings and Queens, I loved everything to do with history. And he once took us to William Wilberforce's house. Everybody, all you had to do was wash your face and bring tuppence, penny there and a penny back on bus. And nearly all the class went. What other teacher can do that? It was marvellous.
Yeah.
I did meet up with him later.
Did you?
And I turned back into a 10-year-old. I was 22, and I'd just had my second baby, and I had my eldest in a pram, and I'd gone to our Gina's open night. My mother said, oh, I can't be bothered. She'd had 6 kids and been to hundreds of open nights. So I said, I'll come, Gina. She said, oh, this is my teacher coming towards us. And coming towards us was Mr. Cuthbertson, and I turned back into a 10-year-old. I couldn't talk. It was lovely. Black curly hair. I used to smell his jacket when I was listening to me reading. I loved him. And I know that he had kids, and I've tried to online, because I know that he'll be gone now, because he would have been probably about 35, 40 when I was 10. So he's gone. But I would have loved to have met his children, just to talk about what an influence he was on me as a kid. Yeah.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, they'll be somewhere.
Yeah.
And then, so after school, then what did you do? When did you meet your first husband?
Well, after school, we was called factory fodder, because I didn't do well at school. I left school hardly being able to read and write, so I could count my wages. We was lent pound, shillings and pence before we left school, so as we could count our wages and sign for them. Factory fodder. And I left school, and on the way home from school I went into the woodyard near the school, and I got a job starting on Monday. I went on Monday, and that's when I found out I can't stand the smell of fresh cut wood. It gives me a headache. But I went, but my dad was out of work. He'd had a serious accident, and so I went home after the first day. My mother said, "What was it like?" I said, "I've got a headache, I don't like it." She said, "You've got to go." I said, "I'll go." I didn't know that you could change jobs. I thought that when you got a job, you stayed there. And so the next day I went, and as soon as I'm walking, now I went to her, "Come on for my dinner." And my mother said, "If you don't like that job your granddad's been, he's been told to talk to Major Gledo and Colonel Cooper at Hull Brewery." They owned Hull Brewery. "Got you an interview for this afternoon if you want to go." And I said, "No, I'll stay where I am." And I started walking up the street, and all of a sudden I could smell the wood, and I thought, I can't do this for years. So I went back home. I said, "I'll do that job." She said, "Go get washed and ready then. Your interview's at 2:00, and this was 1. So never been in town on my own in my life, and I had to walk right across town to Savile Street, and went to there and went talking to the lady that was interviewing me, and she said, "What's your name?" I said, "Pearl Kathleen Mattinson." She said, "Pearl Mattinson? Just to call your mother Pearl Mattinson?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "And your dad's George?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "Oh, you've got the job, you start on Monday." And that was it. And I'd never ever in my life been out of work. I've always gone from one job to another job. I've had 2 jobs, once even had 3 jobs. But I've liked working. I've enjoyed my working life.
So you then, that job was doing what?
Bottling beer. And I was put on a real cushy job because she knew my mum and dad, but I didn't like it, because I was working all on my own in this great big massive room making boxes for cans, bottles of Anchor beer, and there was little stubby bottles, and there was for the going out for the fishermen and for the sailors. And I turned round to her after a few days. When I went for my cup of tea, I got talking to all the young uns, and they said, "What you working on?" I said, "Oh, making anchor boxes." "Oh, that's cushy." I didn't want cushy, I wanted to work with people. I'm a chatterbox. I took it to myself. I hated it. So anyhow, I said to the forewoman, "Can I go and work upstairs with all the young uns?" She said, "Yeah." So sent me upstairs, and they sent me, and I had to, the boxes came from out of a room full of bottles. They went up this lift to the girls at the back of the machine. They took the bottles out, any broken bottles was left. I had to take the boxes down, empty them, check that the bottoms was intact. If there was any that needed fixing, I had to put aside, and a man would come and take them away. And then I would pass the good ones on to the girls that put the beer back in the boxes, and they went down another route. But I loved it, because while you could hear the money jangling, because when the people had the boxes, they had the boxes near the tills, and if they was going to put money in the till and they missed and it went in the box, they'd think, oh, I'll get it later. Then somebody else had moved the box and put another one there. So the money was in the box. The most I ever got was 10 bob. My wages was £4.6 and 4p. So 10 bob was a lot of money. My pocket money was only £1. And my mother had the rest of the money. And so it was brilliant. I never used to tell my mother, otherwise she'd want half. So, and I'd find £0.50. And you always found money. I loved it. I worked that for ages until one of my mates said, I'll come and work with those on capping room. I went in capping room where when the boxes came down the route from being boxed up, they come down and I stacked them. And I loved it. I loved working there. But I met my first boyfriend, my husband, and he said, if you worked at Revive, I can come and see you on a dinner time. So I was so much in love. I gave up a wonderful job that I loved.
That's how it's going to be.
I loved this job, and I gave it up just so that I could see my boyfriend for 3/4 of an hour on dinner time. And he came twice. Then after 3 months, the guy that was in charge of the place come to me and he said, how old are you? I said, 18. He said, you told me you were 17. I said, yeah, I was 17 when I come here, but I was 18 the following week. I said, but I gave you only cards. Yeah, you're sacked. We've been paying a small stamp for you for 3 months and they've got an hour back. So pick your cards up at the end of the week. So from there, I thought, oh, my mother used to work at Kingston Lamp. I'll go and work at Kingston Lamp. Oh, it was miles away. I didn't realise. So it was 2 buses, but I couldn't afford 2 buses. So I got 1 bus and walked. And I had to walk right around near Charlotte Street, Sykes Street. It was off there somewhere. And the bloke said to me, right, you stand here and you've got to check all the light bulbs as they come down. So I said, all right. And he said, you pick up this, you put 4 light bulbs in, you pull it down, you switch it on. If the best, the best. Be careful to come out. He walked away, the girl said, if you do that, we won't have no packing to do. She said, you keep it down and you use the end and you put the bulb in, twist it, as soon as it lights up, you put it down. And you do that. She said, if it blows up, just be careful. I never got cut. A couple used to blow up because he had too much gas in him. I stayed there for about 6 months and then I decided I was going to move on. And so I went and got a job at Metal Box in Gypsyville. That was nearer to where I was living because by this time I was living near my mother. I was living with my mother because I'd split up with my boyfriend and I was having a baby. And so living at my mother's, and my mother sent me to doctor. She said, I think you're pregnant. I said, no, I'm not pregnant. Well, I was nearly 4 months pregnant and I had no idea. So anyhow, my boyfriend found out I was pregnant and he said, I've heard you're pregnant. I said, do I look pregnant? He said, no, leave me alone. So a month later I come back, he said, I'm being told you're pregnant. I said, how far am I supposed to be now? He said, well, we split up at Christmas and by this time it was the beginning of May. So I said, oh, so I'm 5.5, nearly 6 months? He said, yeah. I said, do I look it? He said, no. I said, leave me alone. As he's driving out the street, my mother spotted him, waved him down. Brian, do you know she's having a baby? I could have hit her. So for the next week, I had both of them on at me, get married for the baby. I said, don't need to get married for the baby. the baby will have a name. I said, it's my baby. Didn't know what it was. It's my baby. And he's saying, I love you, I love you. I said, no, you beat me up too many times. That ain't love. Anyhow, in the end, I said, okay. So went to see the vicar. Vicar needed a letter from my dad, but my dad had already left a letter before he went to sea. So we got married. Our banns went in. We got married 3 weeks later on the 28th of May. And so the week before we got married, he used to work 5.5 days a week. So we had to wait while the afternoon, went in town for a wedding ring. Went in the shop and the lady said, what would you like? And my husband real proudly said, we want wedding rings. And she said, oh, have you decided what design you want, or plain? And I just looked and went, no, I don't think I'll bother, I'm not getting married. And I walked out the shop. My husband ran after me, that was Conley's. My husband ran after me. He said, but we've got to get married, I can't come next week, we'll get married next week. I don't want to get married. You know I don't want to get married. So, went home, I went straight upstairs, crying, I just wanted them to leave me alone. And I could hear my mother saying, it's the hormones. Hormones to hell, I didn't want to be married. I was only 19, I didn't want to be married, I could bring a baby up on my own, I could work for it. Anyhow, we got married the next week. And my mother and me went for the wedding rings. So, there we are, in a shop. Oh, you get a present, a wedding present. And I got 6 fruit spoons and a fruit server. Never used them, ever. And we got married. My mother said, oh, that was the happiest time of my life when they played the bridal march and I turned round and you was there because I didn't think you'd come. I said, no, neither did I. And I didn't want to get married. Did not. And yeah, we got married. And we'd only been married 6 weeks. And my cousin was moving to Bangor. And she had an house full of furniture and wanted me to take the payments on it. So my mother worked out, because my husband was still an apprentice. So worked out, yes, we could afford it. So we moved into the house. We just took our clothes and moved. And we lived there. And I must admit, we was happy there. When we first got married on our own, it was lovely. But then, when the baby was 9 months old, a man knocked on my door and said, does your husband ride a little motorbike? I said, yeah. He said, I thought it was him, he's had an accident. And he fainted. And I'm looking after him, sitting him on a chair in the doorway. And I said, what's the matter? He said, I've never seen an accident before, I think he's dead. And when I went to the police, I said, they'd cordoned off because they was waiting for him to die. And it was Cannon Street. Car had come out of Cannon Street, and I think it was Norfolk Street that was right opposite. Went across Charles Street, and my husband was going down Charles Street. He said to the policeman, the sun was in my eyes. He said, the sun's behind you. And he just didn't see him. He hit him. He had head injuries, because in them days you didn't have a crash helmet. Head injuries, this broken wrist, 2 dislocated shoulders because he'd done that. His arm was broken here. His pelvis was broken, his femur was broken, his foot was broken. Every rib on this side, front and back, was broken. And that's why they didn't think he was alive, because he'd been hit by the car, he went up in the air, he travelled with the car, bounced on the front of the car onto the floor, and the car went over him. So he wasn't just hit, he was run over as well. And this man had seen this, and that's why this man was so distraught. Anyhow, I said to the police, will somebody take me to this hospital? No, we ain't got time. I said, where's the man that did it? They said, there. So I went over to the man that did it. He was still sat in his car. I said, you've run my husband over, now take me to the hospital. And he did. Folded my pram up, put it in his boat, and I had the baby on my knee, and off we went. Yeah. And when I got there, he was just laid. Nobody was seeing to him. He was just laid there. They weren't giving him blood. They had oxygen on him. But they weren't doing nothing. I think they was just waiting for him to die because it wasn't worth. Yeah. And he was just moaning and groaning, and I stayed for about 2 hours. And I said, look, I've got to go home. I've got a baby. She needs feeding. I knew she needed feeding because I was pouring with milk. And his mother, his father, and his eldest brother was outside. And they said, oh, well, we'll let his mum come in and see him then. Because when they come to me, they said, Mrs. Ward, and my mother-in-law said, that's me. So she said, Miss Brian Ward. So she went, no, that's my son. He said, we need his wife. I had to sign all the paperwork. And I went home, and then I remember going back. My mother had a phone, so they'd got in touch with my mother to say that he'd had his operation and he'd come through it. And when I went to see him with the baby, his leg was in traction, his arm was in pot, his foot was in pot, but his leg was in traction because apparently he would have had a limp if they hadn't done that. He was in Hull Royal for 3 months, moved from there to hospital in Withensea, and he was in convalescent home for 3 months. Then he come home. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. And it changed him. The man that was nice and kind when we moved into the house turned into a monster. And it went back to how it was when we was courting. Beat me up for nothing. We don't talk about that now, because he now lives with my son because he's got nobody to look after him. And I took loads of photos of when we was young, and he laughed and he said, I do remember this. He said, I'd forgotten these memories, but now I remember them. And he thanked me for taking them. We had a love. And I now go on when they need him to be looked after because he's got dementia. When he needs looking after, I go and take him out for the day. So on my birthday, on the 26th, I'm supposed to be going out for a meal with my friend. I've had to cancel it with Pamela. I've had to cancel it because my son's having some work done in his back way, and he can't have his dad in the house because he'll want to help and he can't. So I've got to take him out for the day.
That's amazing.
But we do get on now. We do talk. And he laughs, yeah.
So you had a daughter with him?
I had a daughter with him, and after his accident, I had a son with him. And, oh, my son is amazing. He's amazing for me, but I've looked after him. I've always been there for him. But his father was never there for him. His father, all his life, but he's there for his father. And he loves him. He loves him. Dale loves his dad. Yeah.
And so, after you'd had your son, where were you working through all of this?
I didn't work when I had Donna because I did get a job at Rowntree's. Is it Rowntree's? The sweet factory. I can't remember what it was called. I got a job on off Beverley Road at a sweet factory. Nestles? No. Needlers. Needlers. I got a job at Needlers, and I went back and I said to my husband, I've got a job, I start on Monday. He said, what about the bairn? I said, well, you can look after her, can't you? No, I'm not looking after her. And if he didn't want to look after her, when I got up to go to work, he got up and he got in his car and he drove away. In other words, you can't go to work because there's nobody to look after the baby. So I didn't go to work at Needlers. And then when I'd had Dale, he'd gone back to work because by this time he was able to work properly. and he'd gone back to work. He was a panel beater at Armstrong's on Anlib Road, and I got a job working at Smith and Nephews, because by this time I was living in Gypsyville. So I would take both bins on bus to the back of Smith and Nephews, where he worked in a garage. We'd put the bins, all dressed in the pyjamas, fed. I'd put them on the back seat, cover them up, and they would stay on the back seat of his car until he finished work, and then he'd take them home and he'd carry them and put them to bed. And that's how we carried on. Everything was fine until he hit me once too often, and I said that was it, and I left, and I never went back. Yeah. And I was sorry to leave that job, because I enjoyed working at a machine called the Big Bertha, making finger plasters. I enjoyed it, and I had to leave there. And then I moved into a little house down Selby Street, and I got a job working fish house. And my father always said if I didn't try harder at school, I'd end up in fish house. So I was real embarrassed to say that I worked in fish house. But I met some good friends and some good people. And then I got married. I was actually working on dock at a place called Brecky's. And it was, met this kid, and he turned around and said, "Oh, my dad works at Brecky's." I said, "Oh, I might know him. What do they call him?" He said, "Alf Anderson." I said, he's the manager, he's my boss." "Yes, my dad." And I bet his dad never ever wanted him to marry a fish house lass. And we got married and had son Jason. And then when Jason was just 2 years old, and my husband was 31, he died of sepsis. And so at that time I was working at Birdseye, and I went back to Birdseye the following year, because he died in the December. I went back in the April, but I couldn't settle, and so I went back home, and I looked around for a job that suited me. So I went to work at Celtic Seafoods cutting queenies. I didn't even know what a queenie was when I took the job, but I worked there, and I used to put my little girl in school at 9, and then I'd have the baby on the back of my bike, and I'd ride him round to the nursery, put him in nursery, and then I'd go to work. And I'd work while one, and I'd go and do some shopping, pick the baby up from school, from nursery, and be outside school for the 4-year-old, 5-year-old getting out of school. Yeah. So, always worked, always got a job. Jobs are there if you really want one.
So what is a queenie?
A queenie is a shellfish, and it's, you've seen the ashtrays? Yeah. That is a scallop. A queenie, scallop is this big. A queenie from Bridlington is this big, which is about 4 inches all the way around. A queenie from Scarborough is about 3 inches all the way around. And you put your knife in the air roll at the side, and you slide it across the top, cutting off the muscle. Then you take all the skin off, cut the queenie and the roe off. Roe is a little piece of orange on the side. Then you clean it. Shells go rubbish. Queenies go in water to swell up, and they go to France. And I've never eaten a queenie in my life. The smell of them is disgusting, but my kids used to love them. My kids will eat anything.
So did you get free queenies or
No,
discount?
no.
Like,
When there was good queenies, and there was when there was good, that meant that when you opened them, there was vibrating, pulsating, and that's because they're alive.
yeah.
Then I'd put a little bag full in my pocket and take them home, and my kids would have them with butter on.
Cooked in a pan?
Yeah. This is why all my kids are brainy, because they've lived on fish that I've been able to take. Yeah. Yeah.
So this is an incredible working life of not just working for money, but working for you with kids,
Yeah.
as a mother working, like
Yeah.
lots and lots of hours of work.
Oh yeah.
And was that common on this area?
Yes. Yes. You will in the other side of Ezel Road, when Havelock Street, Gillett Street, Clinton Street, when it was there, the grannies looked after the kids while the mothers went to work. And the grannies would say, right, it's time for school. Right, stay in street when they come back from school. There was always somebody there. You know,
And you mean once the houses got
pulled
once
down.
people were rehoused?
Yeah. Yeah.
Which meant that families were split
Yeah,
up.
because I was split because my mother lived in Bullsbury and then she lived in town, and I lived down Somerset Street, and my husband had died. My eldest girl was 14 when he died. My eldest boy was 12 when he died. And my youngest two, that was Steve's two, they was 4 and 2. So when Steve first died, I was so ill that my daughter, who was 14, had to look after the children, because I took to my bed and I lived on Librium, and I just slept all the time. And one day she just come upstairs and she said, I'm taking Zoe to school, but you've got to look after the baby, because the baby wasn't in nursery at this time. You've got to look after the baby. And so she took Zoe to nursery. Baby was at home with me. And she just put him on the bed and she said, get up, see to your own baby. And I'm glad she did. I'm glad she was hard like that to do that. Because then he laid with me for a little bit and then that was it. He wanted to be up and about. And so I had to go and pick Zoe up from nursery. And it was funny because before Steve died, it was only 10 days before he died, I'd gone to nursery and I said, can I get Zoe in nursery? I said, she's 4. And she just turned 4 on the 5th of October. I said, can she come? Are you on dole? No. Are you on social? No. Both me and my husband work. You can't have her in, you've got no special circumstances. If your circumstances change, she will give her a place. And a week later I went back and I said to her, I said, my circumstances have changed. She said, what is that? I said, my husband died last week. She said, right. And she shouted to one of the nursery nursemaids, she said, take Zoe, give her a peg, show her where to put a coat. And that was it. She was in nursery. And she'd just turned 4. And she was there for nearly a year. And then as she came out to go to school, Jason was 3, so he took her place. And so that's when I was working. Yeah.
And you've talked in the past, as well as doing all of this, you were knitting and making things and sewing, so you were also doing this extra.
Oh yeah. But then I used to knit and sew for the family, not for anybody else. Yeah. And I dared take anybody else's sewing in because I didn't feel confident enough to be able to say, yeah, I can do that. I did it for family. And
who taught you to sew?
Well, I had a friend, she was actually my babysitter, Susan Ray. She lived near me. She was my babysitter when I was in Selby Street and Donna and Dale was tiny. And I met her a while later when I was trying to get a kids club, a summer kids club going at the old school, when, before the community centre was built. And because the government, the council said they couldn't afford the teachers, so they was closing it. So we said, well, will you let us have the building? until it's pulled down. So I said, yeah. And so I had this, well, yeah, we'll have a kids club. Give me £10, I'll go to a shop, I'll buy some pencils, books and paper and things like that. And then I thought, I can't do this. I don't know what to do. And then all of a sudden, Sue come through the door and she said, oh, you're going to do a kids club, aren't you? Can my two join? I said, I don't know what I'm doing, Sue. She went, oh, I'll help you. And she said, oh, that roll of wallpaper. I said, yeah, I brought it from home. And it was bathroom wallpaper and it looked like waves and under the sea. It was just blue motley. She said, we're going to make that as a screen. And she pinned it across the back of the class. She said, right, kids, get paper, get some pens, get paints if you're allowed. I want you to make fishes. Where did this girl come from? I had everything. I had no idea what to do with it. And this girl was at Sardame for the 2 years we did this until we started getting people to help us. Yeah, we had a wonderful time.
And she taught you to do all.
And she said to me one night, what you doing? I had a little motorbike by this time. She said, what you doing? I said, watching telly. She said, do you want to come and sew buttons on for me? I said, yeah, of course I will. So off I went to her house and I'm sat at the table. I said, right, where's the buttons? She said, in front of you. I said, so I'm not daft. There's no buttons here. And she picked up a sponge button as big as an orange and said, for the fancy dress, it's a laughing policeman, just sew the buttons down the front of there. And that was it. And she used to do there used to be a fancy dress shop down Ezel Road near the flyover, and TaylorMade it was called. And she used to get Sue to make her stuff. And we had a wonderful time. Wonderful time. We did. I never knew what I was going to do next. And she taught me how to sew. And then when it come to doing alterations, I overtook her. Because she'd say to me, oh, I can't do that. And I'd say, oh, let me play with it. And she'd say, how did you do that? I said, oh, don't ask me how I did it. I've done it. And that was how it was. We worked together so well. Yeah.
All fancy dress and all.
It was fancy dress, and then she went to work at making flags in Hawthorne Avenue at one of the units. And I really missed her because by this time we'd gone on at the community centre to doing elderly people's bingo, seaside bingo in Thursday afternoon. And they had the dinner, and then after dinner they had seaside bingo, and everything was great. She used to call the bingo, so then I had to be the bingo caller. I had to check I did everything. I was checking people's cards when they shouted, giving them a ticket, and it'd say 1/2 prize worth 50p or something like that. And I'd say, you can either spend it all today or save it. And we went from tins of beans and tins of meat and things like that to lamps and videos and videotapes and toys and things like that. So near Christmas, people, oh, I'll have that for our Eva, she'll have that. And it worked out really well. I did it for about 4 years until somebody thought they could do the job better than me. So I said, okay. I said, I'm working full time now. I said, I'm better off not doing it. So I walked out, and about 3 months later, it gone bust, and they pleaded with me to go back, and I said, no, I'm doing other things. And my friend Sue, by this time, my friend Sue, had decided to open up a wedding hire. And I said, and she did it from her middle room of her house. And we'd sit there all day, and sometimes nobody would knock. And then it got that her husband come home from work one day. He worked at New Theatre, so he worked all funny hours. And he come home from work one day and he said, he come in, he said, a word, so He took her in the kitchen. Why, he took her outside. He said, I've come in the front door. He said, there's people all sat on the stairs. He said, I went in the front room to watch TV. There's people sat in there. He said, I went to make a cup of tea and there's people sat at the dining room table. He said, this hobby has overtaken our lives. Find somewhere. And she did. Right opposite St George's Road was a moneylender. And he had a shop window. And that's all it was, the one room. Shop window. That's it. And she paid something like about £30 a week rent. And we moved there. And we'd only been there about 6 months. And we had that many people. She was that cheap and she was that good. Because she made everything from scratch. And we'd only been there about 6 months. And she turned round to the man who owned the building, who was the moneylender at the back downstairs. She said, does somebody live upstairs? He said, oh, they've just handed the notice in. She said, can I have it? So he said, yeah, all right. He said, £70 here and upstairs, you've got the full lot. And so, yeah. And by the time she finished working there, she had the front window, she had the upstairs of that shop, and she had the flower shop next door, and she had right across the top of it, she was there 15, 20 years. She did amazing. And I still get people come up to me and say, don't I know you? And I say, oh, I don't know, dear. Didn't you used to have a bridal shop on Ezel Road called Bodyline? Oh yeah, I worked there. I was the manageress. Yeah, I know you from there. You did my wedding 30, 40 years ago. Amazing. I loved it. But our daughter got old enough, so I trained her daughter up and she worked alongside her mother and I went to Birdside full time. Yeah. And I stayed there until it closed down.
And then you got your medal.
I got my medal. I showed you it, didn't I?
Yeah. It's amazing.
Yeah.
So from all the sewing, so you were sewing at home and knitting and stuff for the family, and then you were working with Sue.
Yeah.
And was it just weddings, or is that how you got to do other costumes?
Well, she used to do bits for the tailor-made, but then the weddings took off that much that she had to stop doing tailor-mades. And what we used to do in winter, people would come and say, do you do alterations? Yeah, bring them. And we had a special tin for alterations. And the alterations, the tin was full of money. Because we just did so much. Yeah. And so she taught me to do everything. She taught me how to alter a wedding dress. And you're talking about some dresses that £500-600 then. And I'm cutting them up. Yeah. And we had a few accidents. One of them, the dress come, and my friend, so she took everything home, put them in bags and put them in the washer, and she washed everything in the washer. And when it come out, it just looked like it had been spun that hard, that it had cracked the material. We didn't know what the material was. And so she pressed it and tried to get these cracks out. And I said, leave it with me. And I hung it up and this gal come and had a look at it and she went, oh, that's unusual. I said, it's one and only. I said, you will not get another dress like this. I said, the material's called cracked ice. She said, that's what it looks like, doesn't it? I said, yeah. She bought it. And I went through and I said to Sue, yes, I sold cracked ice. She said, what's cracked ice? I said, that frock that you went and ruined. So another time, she had in winter, she had to have another job to pay the rent because sometimes we didn't have enough. So she had this other job where she worked about 4 or 5 hours on the night in Fish House. And she said to her daughter, take this dress home, put it in the washing machine. But she never put it in the bag. When she shut the washing machine door, she caught the front of the dress in the door. So when it went in a spin, the front of the dress was wrecked. It had a hole in it, wrecked. So said, look at it. She said, I've pressed it. She said, there's nothing I can do. I said, can I play? She said, do what you like. I'm only going to take all the lace and I'm going to take it to bits. So I come in and I said, come and have a look at the dress. And she come and had a look. And I said, Hypnotique. She went, where the bloody hell did you get that name from? I said, it's a mistake. So she laughed. And what I did was, the dress had these 2 panels. So it had a front panel, side panels. And I just cut the front panel off completely. And we just put a bit of netting, tulle, on top of the net. Sold it first time. As soon as it come into the shop, first person that tried it on bought it. And me, because there was mistakes, I just used to, whoa, that's the price. So we never discussed it, because Sue never ever thought they'd sell. So I just used to grab a price out of the air. Oh yeah.
And which makes me think about the Hessle Road has a very particular history, doesn't it, of people wearing very beautiful clothes, flamboyant clothes, men having beautiful clothes, women always look amazing.
When I was a child, women always wore hats. When they was going out dressed up, hat.
And so was, I guess, when Bodyline or the tailors or all of that at that time was when lots of people were buying bespoke clothes or having clothes altered.
Well, yes.
When would this be? What year was this?
This was the 80s, 90s, and even up to a couple of years ago, because the guy's died now, God bless him. This guy always wore 3-piece suit. Always looked so smart, it was unbelievable. He used to go into second-hand shops, buy a suit, and they'd say to him, it don't really fit you. He said, it's okay, because I know somebody. And he'd bring him here to me, and he'd say, right. And I'd say, oh, bloody hell, I've got to take the sleeves out of that. And I'd have to do a tailor's job. But so would give me that much confidence that I could do it. And I used to take his suits in by taking the sleeves out, cutting it off, cutting it down, put it all back together again, and he was happy as Larry.
And so, I mean, lots of people were wearing beautiful clothes,
yes.
weren't they?
Yes.
Do you remember seeing beautiful clothes?
Oh yeah, my mother had beautiful clothes. My father, whenever my father come home from sea, as soon as he landed, he took my mother out. Always bought a pair of shoes, a couple of dresses, one hat. But this was every 4 weeks. And my mother had loads of beautiful clothes.
All off Hessle Road?
Yes.
So
yes.
What do you remember what the shops were?
Lena G, right opposite Raina's. She was the person to see. Because people would be in Raina's and the wife would say, oh, I want a new frock. I'm going to go across to Lena G's. Give us a father. Now, father was a lot of money. For a father, she'd go a hat, coat, loads. And she'd come back. And then when he went to sea, she'd go back to Lena G's and she'd say, I don't need them now.
And swap them? Or leave them?
She'd get the money. And the husband would never question that she didn't have the dress. Because he'd buy her some every time he come home. So she had loads of dresses. But that's how he used to work.
And then the woman would have the money for whatever.
Shopping.
Yeah.
Maybe going to pub. My mother never ever went to pub. She used to belong a dart team, And my father got jealous, so she had to give that up. My father was a very jealous man, but my mother was a very attractive woman. Well, she was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, so they had beautiful clothes. So the street and the road is now. I mean, still now people have amazing hair, don't they?
Yes.
You have beautiful coloured hair, and people are all. There is an effort made.
Yeah.
And so, can you tell me a bit about why you think? What is it about clothes and Hessel Road? I know some of it's to do with money and the sale coming back from fishing, but why might people want to look so beautiful and wear these clothes, do you think?
I think it's one-upmanship, because you would always want to look better than the shipmate's wife, and so it's a one-upmanship that's always just carried on.
So the jewellery is part of it?
Yeah. Henry Aids used to deal just in gold and sovereigns and things like that. And it's a shame now, because when you go, everything's silver, and you have to. When I wanted something gold, I had to ask for something gold. Yeah.
And so, getting back to you making clothes. So you then made. Let's talk about the Cagelles or the Pubs or Vauxhall.
Well, first of all, it was the Vauxhall Dragettes, and I said, what the bloody hell's the Vauxhall Dragettes? And so I went, and this was in the 90s, and I went, and there's all the lads, about 5 of them there was, and they had swings hanging from the ceilings, and they looked amazing, and they all dressed the same, and they was all making their own clothes at this time, and they looked amazing. And then Vauxhall Dragettes went by the wayside after about 2 years, and it become the Gigi Girls, and they called them that because it was Gary, Gavin and Gareth, and they dressed. Sue used to make the dresses, and they dressed amazing, but Sue used to say to him, I can only make the dresses in the winter, don't come to me in the summer. And
what were the dresses like?
Like showgirls, like Ziegfeld Follies, amazing clothes, amazing. Once, do you know Freddie Mercury when he sang with that opera singer?
Possibly.
Barcelona.
It. Yeah.
The song Barcelona, right. Now, she was a big girl, wasn't she? Well, what they did was Gavin got dressed up as Freddie Mercury, moustache and everything, where John, he's gone now, John, we made him a fat suit with boobs with tassels on, the lot, everything. And he used to be the female singer.
Whose name will come to me, yes. I remember.
I can't think of her.
Yeah.
And it was amazing, because he used to do a strip afterwards, so everybody got to see the tassels and the fluff and everything else. And it just was fantastic. But Sue once said to me, we've got a lot of quick changes, will you come and help me dress them? So I said, yeah, fine. So she said, they do the bottom half, you just got to do all the fastenings and help them with the wigs. And they had wigs with great big fancy things on the top. Oh, amazing. I meant to go to Sue's and get the photograph of the Lacagelles, and I forgot about it. And so I got there. She didn't tell me it was an end night because she knows that I don't like strippers. So I said, right, when's the stripper going on? She said, he's going on next. She said, so you just go and stand outside, and when he comes on, just come down the hallway. So I said, all right. So the hallway was extra narrow. So we'd got the Lacagelles ready for going on. She said, the stripper's music stopped now, so he's coming in. Well, I got stuck in this hallway, not knowing I'm like this against the wall because I didn't put my hands down because he was completely naked. And he said, "Evening, love." And just went past me. I'm in shock. And I said to her, "You know, I don't like strippers." She said, "Yeah, he's not interested in you." She said, "Because you're not in the audience." And John came out. I'm glad I had nothing else to do with John's region, bottom region, because John was dancing and doing all the eye kicks and everything, and all of a sudden the girl started laughing. And his testicle had come out. And it was a real tight, like, swimming costume. And I'm going, "John, John, John, John." And every time he danced near me, I'm going, "John, John." He's got this great big smile on his face. And he was just loving it. He thought there was all laughing and cheering for him. There wasn't. Oh, there was. But the bits that was adrift. He said, "Why didn't you tell me?" I said, "I tried." Oh, yeah, I've seen some fun.
And so the Gareth?
Gary, he's gone now. He was called Twaddles, so he's well known on Ezel Road, but his real name was Gary. So when there was talking about making a name up, he said, "Well, he's Gareth, you're Gavin, I'm really Gary, so let's call ourselves the Gigi Girls." And so the Gigi Girls overtook the Vauxhall Dargettes.
And so can you tell us some more about them as individuals? Because people have talked about Twaddles and...
Gareth, he worked on trains. He was a steward on trains. He was a big lad. Nice, very pretty. Gavin was absolutely amazing. He was handsome, boy or girl. He was handsome. Beautiful head of hair. And I'm sorry to say now he's as bald as a coot. But he had the most beautiful head of hair when he was young. And he was really, really handsome. And now if you ever go to the show that they have, with the rainbows.
Pride,
yes. If you go to the old Pride, Gavin is normally the compere there. And he's good at what he does. Very good. And he was an hairdresser. And he was an hairdresser that used to do these way out things. He used to travel all over England doing these hairstyles. And he had a girl that worked for him. And she used to be his muse. Yeah.
And they were Hull Hessel Roaders?
No, Gavin, what? No. None of them was Ezel Roaders. They just love to be on Ezel Road. Why? Because of what it's like. Twaddles, Gary. I first met him when the landlady of Rayners moved into St George's Road. And he walked in, pranced in, like a ballet dancer, kicked his leg up onto the bar and said, "Good evening, everyone." And that's the first time I'd ever seen him. And I found out that he was always in Rayners with her, but he'd moved down here. And that was when Bobby Mandrell, who was Candela Barry, I knew him as Ray Millington because that's his real name, but it was Candela Barry, and he'd been Candela Barry about 25, 30 years, and all of a sudden this young guy in America sent him a solicitor's letter saying he was suing him because he was using his name, and Ray had never registered his name. He said, "I never ever thought I had to." So he calls himself Bobby Mandrell now. He just sat one night when he said, "I've got to change my name," and he just sat looking through all his records, and it just said a few records together, and he just said, "Oh, Bobby Mandrell." He said, that's who I'm going to be. It was the Mandrell sisters and Bobby Darin. Yeah. And he called himself Bobby Mandrell.
So do you know them from... You used to drink in St George's?
Me and my husband used to drink in St George's, yeah. And so I always went in St George's. And that lady had only took over about 3 months and my husband died.
Would that be Clarice?
Yes. But these are photos of Ray on his 40th birthday.
This is... Describe the costume. Tell us tell us what's in it.
From the side, he was dressed in a blue suit, white shirt, and a little tip for hat as a man. But when he turned round, he was dressed in a pink miniskirt, showing his legs, and he had a blue shoe and a pink shoe, and he looked amazing. And that was his 40th birthday, and people went dressed, fancy dress. And I just said, and I'd been invited, and I just said, Ray, do me a favour, let me have you from the side, not from the front. And I ain't got one from the front, so... But that looks amazing, doesn't it?
Really amazing.
Yeah. He took photos.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you remember the atmosphere then of when all of this was happening?
Electric. The atmosphere was electric because it didn't matter whether you was going to see Bobby Mandrell or you're going to see the Lacagelles. Everybody knew there was going to be a good turn. Fantastic. Yeah. I saw my first transsexual there. She'd come on and she was doing all the Eartha Kitt. She was an half-caste gal and she was doing all the Eartha Kitt. And then somebody said, are you a tranny? And she said, I'm transsexual. She said, I'm not a tranny. So he said, oh, because we have trannies in the other room on a Tuesday night. So she said, no, I'm the act. And she'd come from Leeds. And she was amazing. Yeah. And she had blowed boobs. As
in false boobs?
No, as in stuff pushed underneath the skin, you know, Operation Silicone. But there was hard, because this was the 90s. Yeah.
And can you remember any other acts?
No, they're the ones that I really remember. Yeah.
And do you remember what they might perform? She performed Eartha Kitt.
Oh, yeah. Well, when Gavin used to do the Lacagelles, they did together, and then one would stay on while the other one went and got changed, and then that one would come out and do a little act on their own while the other one got changed. But Gavin used to get dressed up as a woman with great big massive boobs and sing a song called Boobs. And have you heard it? I can't remember it, but it do all that, and it always come and make me stand up.
Why, Pearl?
Because I got big boobs. I can't think of the song. It keeps coming into my head and drifting away again. But funny, yeah.
So it was songs and humour,
jokes. They used to do Sound of Music, and the three Gigi girls come on dressed as like nuns or Maria, and they used to be Maria and two nuns, and it was amazing, yeah.
And were they singing live or to soundtrack?
It was always soundtrack. None of them could sing old note, but they was very good at lip syncing. Very good.
And who else might be in the audience at this time? Was it couples? Was it gay people?
Yeah. When they knew that there was going to be a gay act, couples always come. Always. The girls always drag their husbands out. Yeah.
So it was a mixture of
A
people.
mixture of people, and you never ever got anybody nasty. You never got strikes, arguing with gays, not like that. Brilliant.
And so at this time also, if we go back to what you said right at the beginning, which was about your brother and your cousin,
Yeah.
were they part of all of this at that time, or?
Christopher went to Vauxhall right up until about 2 weeks before he died. He died in just a few weeks, and he went and he just said, "I've come to say to her." He took every one of his friends. He said, "I've come to say to her." He said, "You know I'm dying," and they all said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, this is my last time," and there was a lot of tears. But, you know, everybody was glad that he'd come to say to her, rather than and say, "Oh, I wish I'd seen him." Yeah. And he died. Yeah. Yeah, it was diagnosed on the 30th of November. It was 60 on the 2nd of November. It was diagnosed on the 30th of November. And he died on the 6th of February. Yeah.
Terrible.
Yeah. He was a lovely lad. Yeah. I still miss it. In fact, I'm supposed to have my arm in a sling. And my sling was on here. Because I was doing some sewing, I took it off. It's gone. So my sister said, "Well, where can it go?" Whenever anything disappears, I said, "Christopher, put it back. I need it." Because things disappear in here, and I always blame Christopher. And I say to my sister, "Look, that little Easter egg was there yesterday. It wasn't there yesterday, but it's there now. Where's it come from?" And she'd say, "No, it wasn't there, was it?" I said, "Yeah." And that's for instance. Things disappear and come back a few days later.
And why? We've often talked about your experiences with, how would you describe it? Spiritual.
Yeah,
Edgar
yeah.
service.
Yeah, because I believe in God. I go to church on a Sunday, but I do believe in spirits. I'm not supposed to,
Why?
because the church don't believe in him.
But
Check.
you've had very particular experiences.
Yeah,
haven't you?
yeah, oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So coming back, so Christopher was a regular at Vauxhall. Were you a regular at Vauxhall?
I was a regular at Vauxhall, and then Christopher come to live near me. He'd come to live opposite Vauxhall. And I said to him, he said, "What are you doing in here?" I said, "This has been my local for 3 or 4 years. I said, "What are you doing in here?" He said, "Oh, it's the gay scene now, isn't it?" I said, "Yes." So he said, "What are you doing in the gay scene?" I said, "Me and Bob sit in the back." And the back room was for straights, and the front area was for gays.
And do you remember it being that divided, or did it really matter?
It didn't matter. It was just that when this guy took over, he just said, "Look, if anybody doesn't like the gay scene, the back room has male and female toilets. The gay kids will just use the toilets in the big room. No need to worry, lads. They're not going to be after you." And everybody just laughed, and nobody took no notice. And
So tell us about Vauxhall.
oh, I like Vauxhall, and I missed it because it closed down, and Christopher died, and then my friend Sue, she stopped wanting to go out. I told her she's old and boring. But she just got to a stage in her life where she didn't want to go out. But I would only go to Vauxhall. I don't even drink. And I said to her, "I'll drive us there." But, you know.
So why did you like it? What it described
the
it as if
atmosphere.
nobody, like, if nobody's seen it, what might?
It's an happy place. lots and lots of laughing. I think because they've got drunk at the end of the night, you get lots of laughing. It's a lovely place to be in. Yeah, you can see people going in, and you can see somebody new will come in. Oh, who's here? We haven't been in. Oh, same with the girls. Yeah, it's just a lovely place. Well, it was. I know it's opened up as a pub again, but I've not been in.
So you remember it full of gay people from all over?
Yes.
As well as fishermen, or
well, the fishing industry had gone down by this time, but people that worked in the fish houses, they'd be there. Yeah.
Because it was a good time.
It was a good night out. Yeah. If you wanted to watch the act, you just come through the doorway and stood at the bar and watched the act.
And what might the act do in there?
Well, there was an area that would be about this big in the corner of a room, and it was a semicircle, and the act would go on there and perform. Yeah. I had loads and loads of videos, and I've tried to find them. I've had all my videos put onto DVD, and I still can't find them. So I don't know if the guy only, Tony, I don't know if he only put what was at the beginning of the videos and not what was at the back of the videos. I don't know.
And you, so can you describe maybe some of the costumes that you might have seen on people in there, as well as the ones that you were involved in or dressing?
Well, we used to get a group of people that was called clones, and they just make me laugh. Why would a person want to look absolutely identical to everybody else that's there? And they got laughed at that much that they had a room upstairs. They didn't mix with us. They didn't mix with us at all, because they used to come in the chaps and the boots and the waistcoats and the leather hats with all the studs in, and they all had these moustaches that went down to the chin. You've seen them, obviously. Yeah, I've described them right, haven't I? And they all walked in, and if they went to the bar, people would say, "Oh, is that your twin brother?" And so they didn't like that people picked on them. Because John, from the Lacagelles, he was a clone. Yeah. And when I saw him dressed up, I laughed at him. I said, "John, I can't imagine you dressed like that. You go to work at Sue's in a suit. You go dressed up in your fancy clothes, and then you come in here on a Saturday night and go upstairs with all the clones."
Funny times.
Yeah. And you got some of the lesbians, lipstick lesbians, and you got the other lesbians, and I am mesmerised by them, because the way some of them dress, and they really do look like men. Yeah, and them, I can't take my eyes off them. And then you get the others that are just so absolutely beautiful. You think, what the hell is going on? Yeah. But each to their own.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And do you ever remember, not just trans women, do you ever remember any female performers, or I guess what we might call drag kings, like women dressed as men?
Only the one that
Yeah.
she didn't dress as man. She obviously had been a man and now was a woman. She was the only one. I did meet Peter Wilson, and that was his real name, his birth name, and he was called Chantel, but he had the full done. And the only thing is, to me, God made a mistake when he made him, because he was a beautiful, beautiful girl, with or without makeup. Beautiful. Yeah.
But you don't remember any acts, like any lesbian acts, or
No, I've never seen a lesbian act. No. girls that
There
do
was Ruth and the Rudens. And
Oh, Ruth. Oh,
you see.
oh. Do you know? Now, Ruth, she was amazing. And Ruth, I used to look at her and I thought she was a bloke. That's what the one I'm talking about. Yeah. But she was lovely. I used to go and see Ruth and the Rudens wherever she was playing.
Beautiful voice.
Oh, I've got a DVD of hers around. Yeah, amazing. And I had a DVD of a last interview, and I don't know if it was on. You know, all as a screen. I don't know if it was on there, and I'm just flicking through, and I thought, oh, that looks like Ruth, and I started watching it, and it was an interview of her when she was dying of lung cancer, and I just felt so sad for her because she was so lovely and she was so happy and she was fantastic. Did you ever see her? You missed out. She was wonderful. And you know, if any of the blokes had a go at her, quick as a whip, she knew how to pull them down. Yeah. But she didn't have to do that much because other people had pulled them down. She was fantastic. She used to sing mainly at a club off Paisley Street, just across the road there near Walton Street. She used to sing round there somewhere a lot. I only saw her when she went into other pubs. Yeah.
So St George's and Vauxhall, was there any other pubs that you, obviously Rayner's maybe, that you saw acts in, or you went, or you'd helped with costumes?
We didn't do clubs around here. We did halls, big places. There used to be one near Driffield, a great big club, and it was 2-tier area. And I don't like strippers. I'd gone for the Lacagelles, and this was when somebody else was dressing him at first, and me and Sue were sat there, and we thought we was safe because we was up high up. And all of a sudden, I saw him look at us, and I was off like a rat up a drain pipe. And he got Sue. And honest to goodness, slapped his wee in the face. And she was trapped in the chair, she couldn't go out. She tried to push the chair back to get out, and there was somebody behind her, and she couldn't get out. So he had a sitting duck. Oh.
And so there was a strippers were always on at the same time as the drag, like not at the same time, but either before or after.
A lot of the times, because the girls would go for the strippers, but when they saw the Lacagelles, they wear class. They weren't like Bobby Mandrell, because he was an Esselroder, he knew they was ladies. He was an Esselroder and they were ladies. The dress was amazing. Yeah.
And so the difference in the act, because he's very Hessel Road straightforward and takes people down.
Yes. Yeah.
Interesting.
It was. Yeah. Amazing. Last time I went to see Gareth, I was disappointed because I was that used to seeing what they did, and as he's got older he's not doing. Where Ray is exactly the same. You know what you're going to get with Ray,
and it's going to be good.
Good. Always. Now he is in his 70s. He retired at 70, and he's had that many people calling him back that he's gone, have you met him? Isn't he wonderful? When did you interview him?
A few times now, yeah.
Because I said to him, a friend of mine called Kate wants to interview you. Did he tell you?
Yeah.
Yeah. So he said, yeah, that's fine. Yeah. But
He's hilarious as well.
He is amazing. He was born down Somerset Street, Edinburgh Street. I can't remember which one. There was Somerset Street and Edinburgh Street ran parallel to each other. And my sister went to school with his sister Val, and he was younger than her. Yeah. And if you see a photo of him and his sister, that look like identical twins, but Ray looks funnier. honestly. Yeah.
And so from the I guess thinking about the dressing, when you were dressing people, you would go with all the clothes, or you
all the colours.
How would it work? Tell me how it would work.
What would happen was all Johns, I'm talking about the Lacagelles, all Johns would be in a great big bag. It'd be the coat hangers was tied up, and then a big bag which was a duvet cover would be put over them, and it'd be John's name on the front, and Gavin the same. So one side of the dressing room it'd be John, one side, and what would happen was the guys knew what they was putting on, so they'd start going them on, and Sue would just be there to fasten the things, fasten everything.
Fun.
Yeah.
Hard work. Or fun.
It used to be bedlam when there was both, because they'd be both on an eye and both so excited and all over the place, and so she'd just wait while they'd say, right, fasten me, and she, yeah.
So coming back to your brother, because you have talked to me about your brother and that you used to go on bus trips. Would it be the bus trips to? You told me about you went. Would it be St George's would organise a bus trip to go and see Nights Out, or
that one?
No.
My brother. That was Christopher. Yeah. We went to a really big gay place in it was a big dance hall, but mainly gay people, gay men and women went, but there were straights there, and I went with Christopher.
Was it Wakefield Way? I can't remember what. I remember you telling me. Would it be Wakefield Jews way?
Yeah. And I can't remember exactly where we went. I just know that it was the first time in my life I'd ever seen a strobe light. and there were strobe lights dancing all over the place, and there was dancing. And I saw a guy, a clone, and when he turned around, he didn't have no trousers on. He had the chaps down the front, but when he turned around, he just had a G-string up his bum. Well, I'd seen them with the chaps, but they had things on, they had knickers on, but this guy just had this bit of string up. Yeah.
What else do you remember from that night?
Well,
Strobe light?
Strobe lights. I do know somewhere I've got the photos of us all, and it was amazing. Yeah, because there was all gay men, and there was me and my partner at that time, and he wasn't gay, but the landlord fancied him because do you know what a bear is? Right. Apparently my Bob was a bear. And the other thing is, my Bob turned around and said to he used to often have a cuddle with Harry, and he said, Harry, wrong sex for me. And so, but they got on, and that's it. Yeah.
And was this an organised trip?
Yes, it was organised by somebody. I think it was Captain Potter had organised it, and Captain Potter, he used to wear the chaps as well.
And who was Captain Potter?
Captain Potter. We all called him that. I can't think of his first name now. But when all come to all, he started coming in the pub. And our Christopher come in. Our Christopher said to him, "I haven't seen you for a long time. I thought your wife kept you at home." And our Christopher had had an affair years, and his wife gave him an ultimatum: "You're either with me or you're on the scene, but you can't have both." Which I don't blame her. And so she had 2 or 3 kids to him, and then they split up, and he come out full gay, and everybody called him Captain Potter.
And do you think that was common? Do you remember lots of other gay men having wives or having to pretend to not be gay?
Yeah, there was. Yeah, there was. Because they're just that. I think it was like, do you know the actor called Joe Ladden? He's a comedian. Well, I watched his family history, and his grandfather had been a little boy that went up chimneys working for his grandfather. Then as they went further on, they found out he was in a Marine in the Navy. And then after being a Marine for 17 years, he went into meltdown, and Joe said, "That sounds to me like he's gay." And said, yes. And the guy that got him to go in the Navy was a sergeant, and his grandfather, Robert, ended up being a sergeant. And they was working together, and something happened. Possibly the first sergeant went off with somebody else, but he had a mental breakdown. He was put in an hospital for quite a long time, and he'd actually stabbed the first sergeant, and the sword had gone through his side, and he'd stabbed him from the back, because they said the sword come out his tummy. Yeah. And they said he lived, he was okay, and he forgave him, and they was friends again. And then after 17 years after that of being in a mental home, getting himself sorted, he got married to Joe's great-grandmother, and they had children. But Joe said, "I never knew he was gay." He said he might not have been, but when they was on these ships in the 1840s, going away for years sometimes, they did sometimes get friendly.
So I think back to the question, which is people were having to live a particular way.
Oh, yeah.
Like your
Christopher. I always loved it was Christopher. Yeah, because it would have been about the late 70s, for his father's sake, his mother had died, he tried to be straight. He met this girl, and they did fall in love, and they had 2 children. I know that the eldest one was a little boy called Ian. I don't know what the little girl was called, because when Christopher was dying, I said, "Do you want me to try and find him?" He said no. He said, because if he's been brought up okay, he said, who wants to know that the dad's gay? He said, no. I've never seen him, he's never seen me since he was a baby. He said, we'll leave it like that. And so that's what we did. Yeah. So he left everything to me, because I thought if I could track his children down, he could leave his money to his children, but he didn't want to. Yeah. He lived down Boulevard then, a little terrace off Boulevard in Southside. Yeah. Because these kids obviously will be 50s. Yeah. But like he said, wants to know that the dad was gay, and Christopher was gay. There was no hiding it. It was just lovely. Yeah. I loved him to bits. He had a tin horse and used to push it down, push the pedals down, and its legs would go out, and then you released him and its legs come in, and it propelled you forward. And I used to say to him, go get your horse, and he'd bring his horse out, and I'd say, I'm playing on it, you can't have it. And I'd get on it and I'd go all the way up the street. And then you'd have to get off, turn it round and go all the way back again. It was lovely.
But if you think, I mean, it's interesting because you know that through the 70s and 80s there was St George's and Vauxhall and Rayners that were, some people have described as safe places for...
Yeah, because that's what they used to say about Vauxhall. Vauxhall was a safe place because they always had bouncers on the door, and the bouncers was straight men, and if anybody come in and said the wrong thing, if your feet didn't touch the floor, because they'd have you, turn round, out, we don't need you. But I was only kidding, no, we don't need you. And they was chucked out. Yeah, it was good because people in there went for a good laugh, night out, and to watch. I'm a perfect people watcher. So me, I'd get myself in a comfy place where I could see everybody. My cousin, they had her father's funeral in there, and he could have knocked me down with a feather, because I did notice this. She looks very much like you. Gorgeous.
Thanks.
And she kept putting her hands all over our Amy, and I thought, that's not. And then she said to me, do me a favour, go make sure my mum's alright. I said, alright Ames, I will. And I went, and it was so that she could relax and I wasn't there. Because my son was still there. And I said to my son, how long did you stay? He said, oh, you mean after our Amy got rid of you? So I said, yeah. He said, we stayed all night, we had a great time. She said, did you notice a bird? I said, I noticed, but I didn't want to. She'd only got married the year before. She'd been with this guy for about 8 years. And she only got married the year before. And I just couldn't believe it. She came out as soon as her dad was dead. Yeah.
So even then, people were struggling to...
She was his only daughter and she was his little girl. He would not have liked, not at all. When she told her mum, maybe just before the funeral, and she told her mum that she was gay, and she said her teeth rattled because her mother whack and walked away from her. Then her and her mum's like that again, but she doesn't live in Hull now because she was brought up on Hessel Road. She was married twice. She got married when her boys was little, then she got married again, and one of her boys was playing for Robins rugby, and the other one he's very effeminate, the other one, and he lives with his grandma most of the time in Hanover House in town, and I just don't think she could cope living here, because as far as I know she lives Castleford way. Yeah. But it was funny because she went and had a tummy tuck because I saw her and I said, oh, Ames, can't believe how wonderful you look, keep it up darling, keep it up, because she'd gone from about 25 stone to about maybe 15, and that was at her mother's. Then I saw her in Asda and I put my arms around her. I said, Amy Sunday ain't going to be out for me to cuddle, because she's about 45, my youngest is 46, and she's known me all her life, and I don't think she wanted me to know, and that's why she wanted me out the way. Yeah, but she knows I know now because I've been in touch with her. And I said, why don't you talk to me? She went, oh, I didn't think you wanted to talk to me. I said, why wouldn't I want to talk to you? She said, because of what's happened. I said, and? I said, don't forget I've got a brother that's gay. I said, yeah, it was a shock for me. I said, but we all get over shocks, and that was when she told me that mother had had to face and made her teeth rattle. Yeah. There's my brother, when my brother come out to me, he worked in Leeds, and he was taking me to Leeds to my daughters, and he said, I've got something to tell you. I said, go on then, what is that? He said, you won't be happy. I said, go on. I'm gay. I said, what you got to tell me? He said, what do you mean? I said, what you got to tell me? I've known you as gay since you was 3. I said, everything about you, Brian. Everything. When my brother chose a colour for a cardigan or jumper, it had to be pale blue or white. My other brother, grey or black, so as it didn't show the muck. He never got mucky. Never got mucky. And he's still the same.
What? So why do you think? Because my experience of Hessel Road and having done the recordings, lots of people seem very accepting. Maybe in particular places, very accepting, and there's famous people from the area that are gay or have big, and you're very tolerant, and so I experience a level of tolerance. I see a level of tolerance.
Yeah.
But do you think that tolerance is only in certain places, or do you think it's in certain families, or because to me the area is very accepting of difference.
I think that Hull is accepting. I think it's because of the people coming in and out of Hull with us being a port. I didn't know that black people was different to me. And when they all come over in the 50s, I remember going up to a girl in school and doing that. Oh. And that was it. She was just the same as me. Yeah. I've got a lot of... I don't like saying coloured, because coloured to me is wrong. I've got a lot of black friends. Yeah.
And so you had a very accepting liberal family, I
yes.
guess.
Yes.
And where do you think that had come from?
My mother and my father.
But how would they learn to become liberal, do you think?
Just my mother and father were both born in Hull, always, so I think it's just something that's inbred in Hull people to be accepting of everybody. Yeah.
Okay, so now we've done all of this talking and you think back on what we've talked about and remembering these stories from your life, how does it make you feel to remember and speak of these stories?
I feel good. I feel good about my life. I've had a lovely life. I've met lovely people. And if they're not nice people, they're not in my life. Only nice people are in my life. Yeah. I like my life.
Thanks, Pearl.
Thank you.